All right, Matt, we're letting people in, so people will, I'm going to turn off my video. So welcome everyone to the 2020 Business of Outdoor Recreation Summit. We are thrilled to have you. I know it's an early morning. It sounds like there's a couple power outages on on the front. So we'll probably have some people joining us here in a little bit as they figure out their technology. But just some housekeeping. If you have any questions or comments or resources that you'd like to share, just put that in the chat box, and I'll have that in the chat box too. So we'll have people that'll be gradually joining this session. But yeah, I'll go ahead and hand it over. And if you haven't already, go ahead and mute yourself unless you're a presenter. So I would like to go ahead and introduce Matt and Michael. So they'll be leading us through this session. So Matt, I'll hand it over to you. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself.
How you doing? I'm Matt. I'm a Navy veteran of 15 years, and we're gonna breathe here this morning and move. So go ahead and recollect yourself, and we'll move over to the next space in about 2 minutes and begin to breathe and move together.
So good morning, everyone. Matt's just moving to his next spot so he can lead us through some morning breathing meditation moves. To just kind of give you, this is a unique session. So the format will be a little different than the other panel sessions. So Matt will be doing an exercise with us and talking us through that in just a bit. And then he'll talk a little bit about his background. And then we have a special guest, Michael, who will be joining us too. You can kind of see him on the screen. And then Michael will be leading us through a little presentation on his part. Matt will come back, and then we'll open it up to discussion and Q&A. So we're really excited to have them. So just bear with us as he moves into his next spot. And if, a reminder, please make sure you are muted till we have the Q&A portion of the session. We also welcome any questions for the presenters, or maybe even for the group that you would like to pose. And you can just, as you think of them, you can go ahead and add them to the chat box. And we will get to those during the Q&A. And also, yep. All right, Matt is back, so I'll hand it back over to him.
Hi, everyone. We'll go ahead and take our seats. You can find a comfortable seated position. I like to use a bolster because of my knee injuries. But you can do right over left or left over right. We're going to sit upright and tall. We're going to settle in to the ground here. I encourage you, if you can be outside, to be outside. If not, that's okay. We're going to begin with more Chitta Prana. This is going to help stabilize our nervous system and open our creative intelligence. We'll begin sitting upright, put our hands over our knees. And we're going to take a deep inhalation through our mouth, making an O with our mouth, raising our head up to the sky. You can close your eyes or look up if there's a beautiful sky above you like I do right now. You can watch the first couple times and then join in. And then we're going to hold at the top. I'm just going to give you a count of about 4 seconds. And then we're going to exhale through our nose all the way down, touching our chin to our chest. And hold at the bottom for another 4 seconds. Here comes Gus to join us, one of my goats. So again, inhale up to the top. And as you're inhaling up to the top, look as if between both your eyes, squeezing your head, closing your eyes, and then holding. And then back down. We're going to find the rhythm of silence here. So go ahead and join, and we'll be quiet for the next 3 to 4 minutes. finish our last round of breath. We'll raise our head, breathe normally, open our eyes if they're closed. And we're going to begin to move our body. We're going to open our torso. We're going to do a side bend. We'll stay here in Siddhasana in our seating position. Plant one hand down. Let's plant our left hand down to the ground, down to the earth, feeling the earth beneath our hand, raising our right hand up, inhaling through our nose. Holding at the top for a couple seconds. And then releasing down, breathing out through our mouth, grounding our right hand down, and raising our left hand, inhaling up to the sky. We'll do this for about 3 rounds. We're opening our lungs, stretching our lats and our shoulders, and breathing deeply and fully. Last one. Now we're going to go ahead and roll forward onto our front, onto all fours, into a cat-cow position. We'll get our knees beneath our hips and our hands beneath our shoulders. And if you have any neck injuries, make sure you keep your neck in line with your torso for this. So don't follow along with the raising and lowering of your head. But we'll go ahead and inhale through our nose deeply into the cow position, lowering our stomach down to the ground, lifting our head up to the sky, and then exhale through our mouth, or you can do through your nose, rounding your back, sucking your navel up into your back and rounding it. And go ahead and find your own rhythm and speed. We'll do this for about less than a minute. Take notice of your breath coming in and out through your nose if possible, along those membranes, seeing those tissues come alive, breathing like we ought to. Do 2 more. Now, last exhalation. Let's go ahead and push ourselves up into downward dog, pushing our hips back, planting our feet beneath us, getting the weight out from underneath. Hey, Gus. Gus is coming over to say hi. Get the weight off our hands and our shoulders relax. Walk our dog a little bit. Then we're going to go ahead and walk up or hop up to the front of our mat, between our hands, we're going to stay in this, come over here in this forward fold. And Dottie here. And come up slowly, one vertebrae at a time, into mountain pose. And we're going to go ahead and invigorate and energize ourselves with warrior breath. We're going to now take our feet beyond shoulder width apart into horse stance. We're going to squat down, and this will help energize us and awaken us today. We're going to just watch the first round or two and then come join in a squat stance, which engages and energizes everything. Bring our hands up to a 90-degree position with our fists balled up. So 2-part inhale through our nose and 2-part exhalation through our mouth, powerful exhalation through our mouth. So go ahead and watch this. We'll go. Opening our hands on the exhalation, doing a powerful through our mouth, and open your heads like we're grabbing a ball that's about to hit us right in the face. So we'll go ahead again. We'll go for about 10 rounds. Opening our chest wide. Last one. And then bring our hands down by our sides, straighten our legs, come into receptivity, calming ourselves down, recollecting where we are, grounding ourselves to the earth. And now we're ready to begin to move our body more and engage through breath. We'll come back into mountain pose, standing tall and upright, feet shoulder width apart. Again, if you're pregnant, don't go into any of these inversions, downward dog, or anything like that. But we'll begin with our feet beneath us, shoulder width apart. And we're going to go ahead and inhale up to the sky, to high mountain, through our nose. I'm just going to turn to the side so you can see better. And we're going to fold over, down, breathing out, exhalation, putting our stomach on the tops of our legs, on tops of our quads, hanging here for a moment, back and forth. And we're going to lift up to half lift, making a table with our back. You can put your hands on the backs of your calves, or you can put them on tops of your quads. I'll put them on the back of my calves. Make a table with your back as if you're bouncing a glass of water. And then we're going to exhale down, touch the ground, come out to a push-up position, chaturanga, lowering yourself down to the earth, triceps along our torso, exhaling, feeling the earth beneath our feet, put the tops of our feet down. And we're going to lizard pose, stretch, lifting our torso up, lifting our legs up, inhaling through our nose, holding at the top for a second, and then coming back down. We'll push up to downward facing dog. Get the weight and strain out of our shoulders and our neck. Again, if you're pregnant, don't go into an inversion here. Feel that blood flow. Walk our dog, lifting our left heel and our right heel. Pushing our hips back. Now we can either walk or skip to the front. Yes. And come up one vertebrae at a time slowly. Gus and I have known each other since he was a little kid. And we come up to mountain pose. And we'll go again, inhaling up to high mountain, through our nose, folding over, stomach to the tops of our legs, our quads. And we'll go ahead up to half lift. Hands with backs our calves or tops of our quads, making a table with our back. And then come down to the ground. To all the way lowering yourself down to the ground. Just Gus wants to jump on my back and play. Gus. Oh, he's a funny one. Oh, the wife will take him out. Go ahead. We'll take him. He needs to have his playtime. And we'll come back. And to downward facing dog. Walk our dog. Skip up to the front. Raise ourselves up. 1, 2, 3. Up to mountain pose, breathing in fully and deeply for a moment here. And we'll go ahead and re-energize with warrior breath 2. We're going to go ahead, bring back into the horse stance with our feet beyond shoulder width apart, toes pointed slightly outward. Come into a half squat. We're going to go ahead and do another 2-part inhale with a 2-part exhalation. Just watch me for this first round or two. It's a little more complicated than the last time. We'll go ahead and breathe in powerfully. Crossing our arms, putting our hands up by our waist, and then inhaling up again to the sky, and then releasing down powerfully through our mouth. So up in, and releasing down. Go ahead and join me. We'll do about 10 of these. You can even close your eyes. One more. And we'll come up, stand upright, stand tall, breathe normally, open your eyes if you haven't already, into receptivity pose here, recollecting ourselves, feeling the oxygen and the blood coursing through Earth. And now we'll close it out with one last warrior pose, warrior breath 3. Again, staying in this stance. You can shake it out if you need to. Come back into this horse pose. And this will help settle us down and ready for the day. It's a powerful nose inhalation and holding instead of powerful exhalation. Just watch the first round here. We'll do 10. So again, we'll gather up the air and the energy. Hold at the top this time, powerfully squeezing our head and then letting go. No powerful exhalation, just a release of all that tension and whatever you've been holding on to. Straighten our legs, bring our hands down by our side. So again, hold the top, squeeze your head, squeeze your torso for 4 seconds, and then release. Go ahead and join me. Do 2 more. Well, stand upright, let yourself energize and breathing. Open your eyes, and we'll welcome the day together. I appreciate you all coming here this morning and being here with me. Again, my name's Matt, and Matt Toole, and I've been in the service for 15 years. I just got out last year. I'm the owner of, founder of Upstream Immersion LC, and also Tools of Cultivation, our family farm here. That's where we're at with all our animals. And I've just been blessed to be able to enjoy that here in Montana. In my time in the service, I had an occupation that put my body and my mind under a lot of strain between diving, jumping out of airplanes, carrying hundreds of pounds of equipment. More importantly, being exposed to lots of toxins on deployment. It's a challenge, not just to come out into nature, but to actually receive it, to inhale it in, and to tune in to what is good around you. We need to focus and retune as veterans, especially. I think it's population in general. Like I said, on deployment, like all veterans, we're exposed to dangers and toxins and things along the lines of, most of the time we're going to a third world country, developing country, and the protections that we enjoy here with our environment are not as readily available out there. And it's this regular grind and kind of burn on top of this, the 10 or 1% at a time where you're ramping up for missions, that really takes away from the senses of a lot of the veterans. So what we have to do is to turn off our senses. A lot of times we have to or suppress them, suppress the the sights and sounds and smells that are there in order to focus on the job, on the mission that we have there to accomplish. The mission comes first. So for me, and I believe with a lot of other veterans, yes, I mean, nature is going to have its healing effects, but it's been a long journey and the path that I'm still on to take on what's around me and to focus on my breath and what's good inside and what's good all around here in this beautiful creation, and to calm the mind and the body and to heal it ultimately. Want to go ahead and open it up for any questions quickly before I turn to Michael, but I appreciate you guys coming and joining me, and hopefully you've been able to have a window into what it is to come home and to recalibrate, to retune to the nature and what is here and so abundant in Montana. I'll open up for any questions for a few minutes.
So I haven't seen any questions. I think people are still kind of moving into their morning. I haven't seen any questions in the chat box quite yet.
No problem.
So we can go ahead and transition however you want. And then as they come in, oh, we do have a question from Brad. So Brad, if you want to go ahead and put your question in the chat box, Matt or Michael can answer that. All right, we'll see if
you can talk to me or just put in the chat box, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, Matt, sorry, Brad, go ahead and put that in the chat box.
Hey, thanks, Matt. I'll try to get it in the chat box, but how do you, and I don't want to, be stereotypical, but I think, as a man, I think there's a lot less men, it seems like, that practice yoga, and I
agree.
I've had a casual interest in it, but until you just walked me through a few of those exercises, I didn't experience how beneficial it could be. So thank you for that. That was awesome. So
you're welcome.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to, how do you walk men through that kind of barrier, I guess, of stigma and understanding how, I mean, experientially, it's easier to just dive in right there like that, right? But
right.
How do you walk, men through that to understand its benefit and experience it?
Yeah, I think it's just being yourself, being authentic. Honestly, I've been having this experience since I took this on professionally earlier this year. It's just just seeing a guy like myself or yourself kind of just embrace it and be authentically, yourself, and just talk about the benefits. It's something I've dabbled with on and off again throughout the military, but never been seriously part of until recently. So yeah, I think it's just like we're doing, talking and having relationships about it, and just talking in plainly about it, not in maybe a mystical so much kind of way, just a real practical kind of way about the breath and the movement and how it works through regular male issues of injuries and lack of mobility and different ailments that they picked up throughout their life. Does that answer?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I appreciate it because I've had a casual interest in definitely the way that you walked us through that. I mean, helped me to, I guess, to not be turned off by certain things that I think, like you said, that I'm not right. I'm not certain would be as open to something that was more ethereal or mystical, but it was
right.
It was. I really liked how you did that. So
awesome.
Thanks.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks, Brad. Anybody else? No, I was gonna go ahead and turn over to Michael here. I got a chance for maybe one more little question.
Yeah, so it looks like Gina has a question. She says, thank you so much for your time this morning. Are there any yoga moves that can help with lower back pain?
Yes. I mean, what we were going towards with the lizard pose and the sun A, and then upward facing dog would be right off the top of my head, and then there are several others. yeah, and I definitely have experienced that and still do with, you know, the injuries from my previous occupation. Absolutely.
Perfect.
Well, listen,
Thank you so-
and go ahead, Shanna.
Oh, no, go ahead. I was going to hand it back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. In time, I want to go ahead and introduce a good friend of mine, Michael Heck. He's an experienced clinical director for Crossway Incorporated. So we met via the Navy SEAL Foundation. Him and his colleagues have done a lot of good work with my community in the past. And he's just been extremely kind and gracious and really insightful person to myself and also to returning vets. And I'd like him to go ahead and introduce himself, tell a lot more about him than I am doing right now. And I'll hand it over to Michael right now. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Matt. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed the introduction to some of the yoga and how more wonderfully Montana is it to be able to stretch in the middle of a beautiful forest and then have your dog and small little goat come alongside and want to play. There's nothing more wonderfully Montana than that, and I really enjoyed that time and being able to also get into that peaceful place and that centered place. And so Shanna, if you want, you can go ahead and post that first slide while I do a brief introduction of myself and give just a little bit of a background. I've had about, oh gosh, at this point, about 21 years in the field of clinical psychology and working with people. And at this point, being, you know, working with people dealing with trauma and wanting to understand recalibration and reconnection, which is what Matt really did a good job of walking us through, introducing us to today. And I'm going to do two things today. I want to be able to accomplish, or at least begin the conversation about perception, and then have a brief introduction to EMDR. But in the 21 years that I've been doing this, I've become a licensed clinical therapist in the state of Montana, and then also trained in trauma resolution in some other areas. And along the way, I've met more and more active duty and then also veterans who are wanting to work through trauma, whether it's post-traumatic stress, acute stress, general anxiety disorders and such. And, you know, I think, number one, there's no way I'm going to be able to cover my bases this morning. There's so much wonderful literature written about trauma, but probably since the mid 80s has there been an introduction to EMDR in order to resolve trauma in a way that's expedited compared to talk therapy. We know talk therapy is very successful, but at the same time, as we understand our brain and its real and how it takes in information, EMDR has been the outcome of that development. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning with you. But one of the things that I really enjoyed about my conversations with Matt is returning to the basic building blocks of being human, and that is perception. And when you think of perception, you can think of the five senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. And as I even went back and looked at some of the other literature, they're also including our understanding and experience with space. How we experience space. And I'm not talking about, you know, spaces in outer space. I'm talking about the space around us and how we perceive that. And what perception essentially is how we construct our reality, how we take in information around us. And it's the five senses that those are the the tools that we have that that help us to construct our reality. And everybody, based on a whole lot of different experiences, begins to put together a story. And Matt had mentioned towards the end that you know, as he served, there are some things in his experience, in his senses, that he had to suppress, or something that may have been overwhelmed, and so he had to manage, navigate, shut down, shut off. And so much of this morning is about reconnection, recalibration, recentering. And that's a lot of what EMDR can be about for those who are, have struggled with either a heightened sense of stress or anxiety over a period of time, or an experience, a traumatic experience. And so it's you're going to get a, like I said, a brief introduction, but EMDR essentially stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And so to really bottom line that a little bit is to that this psychotherapy is a therapy that enables people to heal from symptoms and emotional distress. And I don't essentially want to read it word for word. I've got it up there for you, but I want to talk a little bit about it while you're reading it. Because in so many ways, when I'm working with individuals who have heightened stress, whether it's due to an exposure to a prolonged exposure to technology, a prolonged exposure to a stressful environment, for those veterans or active duty that are with us right now, it's it tends to be all of the above. So much of the military life is about the mission, and the impact of that mission over a prolonged frame of time really begins to impact the human experience. I've also found EMDR to be helpful with moms who are raising kids at home, and just the stress of it, and how you take in that perception, how you take in and create that narrative of being a mom. I've experienced EMDR to be helpful in all of the above. You know, in terms of what Matt's goals and mission and vision is that EMDR has been amazingly successful with veterans who are adjusting to life outside of the mission and creating new meaning. And when you go into nature, you have to be able to recalibrate. And that can be very difficult to do, because what you're going to find is that when there is intense stress or trauma, that it serves as a barrier. And Shanna, we can go to that next slide. The unseen wound. So if you think about it, if you jump ahead even to that second sentence, when you cut your hand, your body works to close the wound. If a foreign object or repeated injury irritates the wound, it festers and causes pain. Once the block is removed, healing resumes. Now, here's the wonderful thing about being human, is that even with a traumatic wound, our mental health begins to immediately step up. We begin to try to figure out ways in order to heal ourselves. It's the wonderful resiliency of being a human being. And so, and that's noted a couple times in a couple of the slides, that we're wounded, we automatically try to figure out ways to heal. But sometimes those stressors, those traumas, those pains can overwhelm and sit there to such an extent that it would be difficult for a period of time to do what Matt was doing this morning with, in terms of recalibrating and recentering and being in touch with himself and the world around him. And so in that sense, over the decades of understanding clinical psychology, the best tools we had until probably about the 80s was to do talk therapy and explore things that have been difficult or hurtful or harmful. But with EMDR, we can get there faster. And that's really good news because it actually relies less, the process of EMDR actually relies less on talk therapy and more on processing. And a lot of people really like that. A lot of people really enjoy that. It's not different. It's not an easy process because to face hard things is a challenge. But at the same time, people notice that it's the process of resolving stress, anxiety, and trauma is expedited. You know, if you look at, again, if you look at that phrase, the brain's, it's about midway through that slide, the brain's information processing system naturally moves towards mental health. So any of you out there that might be struggling with stressors or traumas or pains, that we naturally are resilient enough, we instinctively want to move towards our mental health. And that's always good to understand as a first step, that everyone here this morning is looking for ways to be better and healthier. So in that sense, go easy on yourself today if you haven't figured out all of the different ways in which to manage some of the things you're struggling with, because over time you will figure it out. And so the goal for EMDR is to help the system become unblocked, to help our systems become more balanced for many things that have been blocked. Once the block is removed, healing resumes. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. You know, our minds are amazing in such a way we're not even sure yet. We don't have a complete sense of understanding in terms of our ability to recover and learn and explore and be connected. But what EMDR therapy does show is that we can in fact heal from psychological trauma, much as the body recovers from a physical trauma. When you do cut your hand, your body works to close the wound. However, if a foreign object or repeated injury irritates the wound, it festers and causes pain. Now, that's the impact of an external, something that traumatizes us or something that sits with us for a long period of times in terms of understanding stress or anxiety. Stress and anxiety is not the enemy. It's how long we sit with it. It's our relationship to it. It's how we process it. It's how we take in information. And so in that sense, we quickly get into kind of things that are like internal narratives, our personal story. And in many ways, when I've worked with those who are adjusting out of the service, they have to recalibrate everything from how they understand the mission, because for many of the veterans that I've worked with, the mission is a trigger. It's a survival mechanism. It's the fear of failure. And so in that sense, even having to recalibrate and create a new narrative is incredibly important to unblocking the internal systems of our brain. And EMDR therapy demonstrates that a similar sequence of events occurs with the mental processes, kind of like what I was just describing. Again, if there's anything that you can take with you today regarding understanding your perception of things and EMDR, is that you naturally want to move towards mental health. And so I hope that throughout the day you can sit with that and understand that you have choices and that you have opportunities, because that's where you naturally instinctively want to go. However, there are events that happen to us that are big and that can block the progression of our mental health. And EMDR helps us to process through that. And Shanna, I think that's my last slide. Is that correct? So, and so one of the things that Matt is doing is he's finding wonderful ways in which to exercise perception, to be able to exercise his own and process his own experience with recalibration and reconnection. And one of the points of connection that he and I have had is how EMDR can be helpful just as well in that process. And so, you know, we have plenty of time for some questions and answers. I planned on keeping it brief. Matt and I are going to take some time to answer any questions you might have. I've given you not even an hors d'oeuvre of information regarding EMDR perception and trauma resolution. And so we're definitely open to any questions you may have at this point. And so I appreciate everybody being here today. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it up.
Thank you so much, Michael. Yeah, so if anyone has questions, if you could just, if you know how to do the hand raise feature on Zoom, go ahead and do that. Or just shoot a message in the chat box that says, hey, I have a question, and then I can unmute you, or you can just put your question in the chat box. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and put that there.
And before you do ask any questions, I understand completely that the topic that I present tends to get into some vulnerable areas of people's life, and so in that sense, you know, that questions that you would ask about resolution of issues that you're facing may get personal, and so please. Number one, be aware of that, but also understand that you don't necessarily have to present to all of you in order to ask those kinds of questions, because it can be a vulnerable area for people.
Well, I'm not supposed to be talking, but so this is Sheena. We'd just like to say thank you so much for your presentation. Some of the people on this panel may have known, but last year we were in a really bad car accident, about time actually. And so our therapist, to help us deal with PTSD, had actually mentioned kind of the process that you talked about, but I didn't know a whole lot about it, and they hadn't expanded. So this is really valuable and makes me feel a little more comfortable maybe asking them more about it and exploring that as we're dealing a year out with PTSD. So I really appreciate both you and Matt talking about this, because yeah, I think it could be valuable for many different aspects of your life.
I'll just chime in. Hey, thanks again, Michael. Awesome presentation on this, and thanks for coming alongside. And Shanna, thank you for sharing, and more, also just as important for setting all of these things up. I definitely think it's important more now than ever, addressing, you know, trauma and stress through these modalities, through EMDR, through connecting through nature, especially what we're going through as a nation and on a global scale. You know, individually, just the regular population being exposed to things that, you know, I've been exposed to throughout my work, but, you know, I wouldn't wish it on our regular civilian population, and yet it's kind of it's definitely come to the doorstep. And then, you know, you have people who are in basically warlike, combat-like stress situations with first responders and medical. I mean, even right now, as we're speaking here in Flathead and across Montana. So now it's important more than ever to address these you know, stressful, traumatic times through things that are naturally healthy, through what we have in abundance out here in Montana. So I just want to kind of connect that, piggyback on what Michael was saying. And then go ahead.
Well, I know we have a question from Gina.
There you go. Thank you. So Gina has a question. Is there any advice that you can give for those of us with spouses that have PTSD?
Matt, is there anything you want to speak into that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, and, you know, that's what's actually going to connect some of my links with, you know, depending if they're a vet, obviously if they're a military member, you know, connecting with someone like Michael, obviously reframing what it is they've gone through, and another practical resource if we're in the service or are, you know, especially locally, and if they can go refer to the local vet center. The one here in Kalispell has been tremendous. I had an amazing relationship with them and provided links to that. Should be on the page, and if it's not, I'll have them up there. But it's just real practical folk who all have, most of all, have lived the life of a service member and struggled through these transitions. And they can definitely help you most of it, if not all the way. And if need to be, refer you on to someone like Michael or someone else. I don't know, did that speak to it, or you want to have more of a question, more like a practical day-to-day kind of application?
Well, we can definitely do both. I think there's a need for both in terms of needing resources and practical application daily. And I think Gina, you know, spouses, you know, when you have a spouse with PTSD, I currently work with a person in the Army, an individual in the Army who's getting ready to transition out, and his spouse is what got him into meeting with me. And so in terms of being able to communicate, you know, if you feel like that's a need that would be helpful for your spouse in terms of seeking out counseling, being able to frame that in a way to your spouse that is gracious and compassionate um, but honest at the same time. And so I think that that's what has brought a handful of veterans into my office, is just they continue to receive gracious yet open feedback from their families. But Matt has also has provided some practical resources for you as well.
Hey, one quick last thing. Speaking as a military service member and having a spouse that has, you know, prompted me to seek care in the past, you know, it could be a delicate subject, obviously. So the most important thing I found on a practical level is they have to own it. They have to have the will, the desire to go out and seek that. So it might not be what you maybe propose to them, but if they own that avenue, that counseling, then that'll be the most beneficial. And if you can have somebody on a practical level, maybe if they won't listen to you or receive it from you, then if there's a friend or somebody else that they listen to, who would take, you know, who they would, you know, respect that counsel, then maybe have them propose that. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much for your answer. I guess I have a question. How do you see, kind of Brad talked about it, integration of outdoor recreation spaces in the therapy and also yoga for healing? And I know you've already talked about that, but how do you see the two connecting?
Well, I see, like I say, I think for the general populace, but definitely for people like myself, who've been in, regular stressful environments, kind of tuning out the noise and the suppression of senses and kicking it on is a challenge. It requires discipline and focus and practice. And so that's why I think yoga, for me, and immersing like intensely into environments, is necessary, especially for those of us who've been through like extreme conditions. And one of the things, one of the links I have, again, if it's not there, I'll get it after we conclude today. But I'm on the pathway with Wim Hof breathing and cold water immersion technique, and it forces, just like I was sharing this with Michael a little while ago. A lot of us, we have to kind of get slapped up the side of the head by a 2x4 to kind of stop thinking about these negative aspects, and that forces, it's an intense engagement of the elements of cold water and engaging with that. And you have to do that via breath work. You have to be in tune with your body and adjusting the oxygen levels and alkalinity. So that's where, sorry, I went a little bit around the bush on that, but that's where it's important to breathe properly, to actually like open up your senses and to engage on what's around us. And I think yoga and different breathwork practices, breathing healthy and deeply and fully, helps fine tune and optimize that for everyone, but especially for veterans and first responders and those who suffered and survived trauma. Does that answer that?
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. I'm gonna, so I don't take over this.
I think I see Brad had a
yeah, so I'm gonna
here.
unmute Brad real quick.
Hey, thanks, Sheena. Yeah, thank you both for, you really kind of threw a curveball. I wasn't expecting this to be so, strike so close to home. So I really appreciate what you walked us through. And it's interesting, Matt, you talked a lot about, the specific experience of, mission critical, veterans who go through a specific kind of trauma. And I wonder what your thoughts, all of your thoughts are on, and I'm glad that Matt keyed in, or sorry, I kind of forgot which one of you talked about it. Or I think Michael spoke to kind of the, mothers, the experience of mothers and motherhood, which I've firsthand watched my wife go through more than I think I can endure. But, as a father before, and in this day and age where there's an entirely different sort of stimulation and stimuli, and the overwhelm that I see my kids going through with a sedentary lifestyle, the impact of social media, of esports, online gaming. I wonder, have either of you, I guess I see what you are both doing. And one of the things that I desire to do is to pull my kids and, and other kids out of that kind of, I guess, dopamine it's really a dopamine inducing life, right? I guess I wonder if you could speak to that, because one of the things that I feel, I guess, as a sort of mission that I want to pull kids out of this, they're in an entirely different kind of biome than most of us grew up in, right? They're experiencing a degree of stimulation and engagement that's so different. And I don't know that I have the tools to address it, but I accept that I want to intersect and interrupt, and like you guys guide, Matt, you guide veterans into an experience like you did us this morning. Anyway, I guess I just wondered if you could speak to that. I'm sorry, I know that's kind of a broad, scattered topic I just threw out there, but
No, I
I'd like
think,
to see.
go
You
ahead,
know what I'm
Brad.
getting at?
Yes. So yeah, the rules are changing, Brad, or the rules have changed when it comes to children and the creative process of it. And I think really, Brad, what you're referring to is what's the role of intentionality with parenting? What's the role of technology? And, especially in a season where, for many states, they're trying to figure out online learning, and then kids will in many ways want still that online time, because for some of them now, that is the social engagement. And for those of us who, my generation was the generation that was first introduced to in-home gaming. And so I know what it's like. I remember what it's like to have one foot in and one foot out of that, in terms of what it's like to be raised with the outside exploration experience and having to deal with boredom. And boredom is actually a bridge for creative expression and the creative process. And with video games, the rules have changed regarding the creative process, and we're seeing a lot of the impact even in terms of this sedentary lifestyle. And so in terms of interrupting it, it takes a great deal of intentionality, because as you know, for me as a parent, the rules were, when I was raised, you could let some kids have a degree of independence, and that independence would draw them outside. And that's not the case anymore, where kids want that level of stimulation when it comes to technology. And so there's a heightened level of intentionality parents are now battling, because it turns into a fight for a variety of reasons. And so intentionality really is the key regarding rules around technology in terms of interrupting that process and making sure that, having experiences like being in the outdoors is a part of the process. So we're talking about family values then, right? And so intentionality has become a very significant tool for parents, but at the same time, it's also very difficult to battle that when society in general has geared in that direction. Does that make sense, Brad?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And I think that's, my desire is to see some programs or like an intentional, framework to draw, to lead, families, kids out of kind of the maybe a cycle, of what seems to be the new norm.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah. So,
Um,
yeah.
Brad, this would be a wonderful. We can make it a whole session out of this topic alone. But I know we have about 5 minutes. And Matt, you had a question from Rachel. She wanted to know if you'd be instructing the breathing and cold water methods.
Yes. Yeah, I replied to that. Not here today, but down the road. Very much passionate about that. And yes. However, Michael, I'll let you go ahead and finish out answering any questions and give your final thoughts, and then I'll jump in here at the end.
Well, I think that, and if there aren't any other further questions, I know we just have a couple minutes, because whatever, those of you who have asked questions, you realize that the issue is multifaceted when it comes to being connected. It really is as simple as Matt leading us in a yoga in yoga exercises, and then beginning to frame the question of what it does it mean to recalibrate and reconnect, and to lead us in a conversation, or at least thoughts about our families and the role of technology and our loved ones. And so it's a big picture. We easily go to big picture issues, right? So I think one of the things to keep in mind is going back to just some of my initial observations, is that we naturally want mental health. People naturally want to feel well. And so it takes intentionality to be in tune with that. And so things like moms and dads taking good care of themselves for moments at a time. And being able to do things to take care of themselves to help them take care of their kids. And if there happens to be trauma, we now have interventions and psychotherapies that will help with that. Or if there's elevated stress, this is, Matt's developing a program that's going to be a wonderful resource for people. And so if there is any follow-up questions for that, I believe you'll have our contact.
Hey, thanks again, Michael. Really appreciate it. Come alongside me and us coming together and helping address these issues and explain how nature and therapy integrates completely. I just want to go ahead and thank Shanna so much, and Calvin and Rachel. Thank all of you for helping us, and thanks for the great questions. Again, like Michael's saying, we'll be around to follow up. I think I'll be sitting in on the next panel. Yeah, I really appreciate you guys being here and participating. And let's get outside and take this all in and really enjoy our beautiful state. Again, thank you, and follow up with all of you guys. Again, please feel free to hit Michael or myself up with any follow-up questions. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.